Good morning. I guess you are the survivors from last night. But I thought it's an interesting topic that I was asked to cover this morning. I think a good way to start the day and to give some perspective to some of the panels that are to follow. And that is, what are the building blocks for the fourth industrial revolution in Africa? And that led me to think about what is the way in which Africans will connect to the fourth industrial revolution. And taking into account that at the moment, as an industry, we've been very successful in connecting Africa. Almost everybody has a mobile phone. But will that mobile phone enable or inhibit the adoption of the fourth industrial revolution in Africa? And yep, there we are. So is that device an enabler or an inhibitor? What we see from elsewhere in the world is that data consumption, the majority of the volume of data consumption, is in fact being consumed from the fixed line. Fixed line accounting for more than 70% of total data consumption. Mobility being important, but in terms of overall volumes, amounting for a minority of it. In the UK, the average household now consumes 500 gigabit a month on average over their fixed line. When we turn to Africa, what we see is an inverse. Less than 3% are accessing the internet on fixed line. And what does that mean? The fixed line is, in most instances, faster, cheaper, because it's not pay-as-you-go, so it's uncapped. So people have an ability to experiment, to use data without being concerned about usage costs, and hence are in the position of being creators of content and capability rather than just being consumers. And again, looking at fixed line penetration across the continent, highest is Senegal with a little over 10%. But the majority of the other countries are really, 2 to 4% at most. And that really leads to the question as to what we as an industry should be doing to enable the continent to have fast, low-cost and uncapped bandwidth to access and participate in the fourth industrial revolution. One of the things that we've been doing as an organization is thinking about what is the technology and how do we enable that to happen. And hence, one of the acquisitions we did recently, which was Telrad Networks, which is a manufacturer of low-cost 4G and soon 5G solutions, enabling wireless and other technologies for people to have fixed low-cost broadband networks. And the importance of that is because poor mobile data affordability leads to data rationing. People simply are not using the networks in the way that perhaps we anticipate they should be doing by saying everybody's connected to the internet by having a mobile phone. And when we look at affordability, it's not sufficient to just look at the cost of broadband and say, well, data prices have come down. Because what we need to look at is what is the affordability to people? What percentage of their income per capita is being spent or able to be spent on broadband. So looking at that map, what it really the countries in blue are those where the if you consumed 100 gigabit per month, that the cost of that is less than 8% of the income per capita. So you can say that's where it's approaching affordability. But in most of the other countries, particularly what you're seeing in magenta and red, there the cost per capita of mobile broadband is more than 20% of income. So to expect people to participate in the fourth industrial revolution when you're now requiring them to spend 20% or more of their income in order to access data and to access those services is the problem that we as an industry need to overcome. So looking at OECD countries, fixed uncapped broadband costs on average about 1.5% of per capita income, which is probably a reasonable benchmark to say what should people be spending in order to have fast, uncapped, affordable bandwidth and participate in the fourth industrial revolution. In half of African countries, 1.5% of income gets you less than 100 megabits of data. So by comparison to the data from the UK, spending 1.5% in the UK would get you 500 gigabit plus. Using a mobile phone, which is the only means of accessing it in most of Africa, you are getting 100 megabit. And only in 5 countries in Africa does it get you more than 1 gigabit rather than 500 gigabits. So this, I think, is the key challenge which we as an industry need to overcome if we want people to move from being simple consumers to being creators in the fourth industrial revolution. Now, if we now said what is the price point at which Africa is spending 1.5% of their income, we get to a price point of about $5 or less. So that really is the challenge which we as an industry and which Telrad is trying to solve, is how do you get the price point of fixed, fast and uncapped broadband to $5 or less. That is really the challenge which we as an industry have. So that again leads me to the overall question which I began with, which is, can you participate in the fourth industrial revolution with just a phone? Now, obviously that phone is an enabler. It's a ability to access the fourth industrial revolution. You can access mobile money. We know all the services that you can access. But it is a consumer device, and it is something which will result in Africa remaining to be consumers in the fourth industrial revolution rather than creators. If we look at Kenya as a case study, what we see in Kenya is that according to the official statistics which the regulator puts out periodically, almost 100% of the population are connected to the internet, because 100% of the population have a mobile phone in their pocket. So therefore, as far as official statistics are concerned, everybody has access to data. But when you look and see who is actually using that data, a quite different picture emerges. And what we see there is that half of mobile users in Kenya are consuming less than 100 megabits per month. And if you look at the map, the light yellow colors that you're seeing there, in those areas, only between 3 and 7% of mobile users are consuming any data at all. So in the outlying rural areas, the more remote areas, only a small fraction of the mobile users are in fact using data and accessing data services. You know, that increases once you get to the more urban and metropolitan areas to, you know, up to 63%. But I think the point is clear, is that there are still significant numbers of people who the regulators and we as an industry consider that we've connected, yet are from an affordability point of view not able to access data or the internet in a meaningful way. So if we remove those limits, if we now said there was cheap, affordable bandwidth, what would people do? You know, obviously the ability to create content and to move from a mobile device to a different kind of device which enables creation then becomes possible. And that moves Africa from being consumers, mobile device, and being a consumer of content and services from elsewhere into being creators of our own applications. And, you know, I think if you look at Africa as a whole and you say, how many unicorns has Africa created over the last few years? And I mean genuine tech unicorns where someone has created software, created a capability, and created a company that's worth $1 billion or more. You know, it's hard to think of even one. Yet you see other countries across the world producing dozens of unicorns on an annual basis. And, you know, if we want to move from consumer to creator to creating unicorns, I think the key obstacle we need to overcome is to be able to provide uncapped and affordable data. A component of that at this point is not only reducing the price to below $5, but also connecting schools, connecting community centers, and using those as interim measures to provide access. So I wanted to spend the last few minutes just telling you a little bit about an initiative that we've been working on together with GIGA, which is a UNICEF project, which is designed to connect schools across the world. But we've been working particularly on connecting schools across Africa. So just a short video and then a couple of slides just to round off and tell you about this initiative, which we think is going to be one of the key enablers going forward of the fourth industrial revolution. So there you saw our own Ben Roberts, who leads this initiative, wiring up schools in remote areas. Amazing, he still knows how to wire a router. But one of the key parts of this initiative, which we've been working very hard on, is a mapping system which maps all of the schools in Africa. Now, I couldn't show you this live because I have to use slides. So I've got some screenshots, but you can go online yourself and have a look to see how the mapping system works. I mean, it's all open for anyone to have a look at. The URL is at the bottom there, schools.liquid.tech. But it shows the fiber network that we have, and then as you scroll in, it now shows you all the schools in the various countries that we've been able to map to date. So every single school has got a GPS coordinate. So, I mean, those dots that you're seeing there is Nairobi and the surrounding area. Amazing. Every dot that you see there is a school. The darker colored ones are the connected schools. The lighter ones are still unconnected. But as you zoom in, you can, well, again, another shot there of Kampala and showing the, the number of schools that that there are. There's Southern Africa. And then as you zoom in, it gives you the exact GPS coordinates of the school. It tells you whether the school is connected or unconnected. And if it is connected, it will tell you the service provider and the speed of connectivity at that school. So, our objective here is to work with UNICEF and other partners in the industry. And if there's anyone here who would like to work with us on this in their respective countries, please come forward and talk to us or talk to Ben, who's sitting in the front. And or you're part of government and you'd like to work in getting your country mapped if it's one of the ones that has not yet been mapped. But the key objective here is, as an industry with UNICEF, to connect every school in Africa to fast, uncapped broadband to enable children in those schools to participate as creators in the fourth industrial revolution. And, I think it goes without saying that, a child who is 10 years old in a school today, which we're able to connect, in 10 years' time, when we hope to have, all these schools connected, will be 18 and will be entering the economy. So the time is now to get these schools connected as a key enabler of the fourth industrial revolution in Africa. Thank you.